5, we'll call the meeting to order. Any public comments? No public.
There's no public people. No, we recorded.
Do anybody have any comments or changes to the agenda? It seems it's pretty, got a lot of stuff on here. Jim, where did you say the Bill Doyle thing was?
Oh, I was gonna put it under new business, but it should be part of old business because we talked about it at the last meeting.
I'm gonna add C, Bill Doyle, because, I have done some research on that and sent you all an email. So we'll do that, okay?
Good.
Good, all right, so we have a lot to talk about tonight. And the first thing is the strategic planning update, the mission. I asked Jim to put the mission statement. There's two, Jim, are they the same or?
Yeah, so I put the current one on the agenda as well as there's an entire sheet
Okay.
that has the current mission statement, but also the possible mission statements that we had been kind of going around and changes. There were some words that I was asked to find some other words to put in. So what we did was, and I think we talked about it also in the policy circle, the best way to kind of present this, and what we thought would be good would be maybe we just vote on these mission statements.
For my edification, how did this come about? Where people didn't like it or somebody challenged it or what?
I think we, in the beginning of the strategic planning process, and I think it'd been kind of like murmured about, was the current mission statement is pretty long. And it also seemed a little bit dated with words like telecommunications technology. So what we were thinking was, when we started the strategic planning process, was to maybe trim the mission statement and make it a little bit more succinct, and maybe take out some words that might be no longer as relevant as they used to be.
Okay.
So that's where how that came about. And so we had put out, the staff had come up with a possible mission statement, and that one is as seen in A. And then I think as the group started to talk about other mission statements, there was whether, I think the word facilitates came up about, is there a better word than facilitates? I think there was also, Chad had proposed a shorter one, which is located at B, and talking about, did we necessarily need to put in all of, even like the extra bit about like the media production? And then, so what we did was, for the strategic planning retreat, we kind of put it on hold because we hadn't kind of like really talked about it and decided which one we wanted to go on, but we thought that we could still do the retreat while having still the same mission statement as the current one and still go on through the process. So then I think, but now that we're in the process of doing the strategic plan, the mission statement, about coming back and saying, can we come to an agreement about a new mission statement, and maybe something that we can all whether agree upon by vote, or if we wanted to talk about it. So I think that it was also kind of pushed out to, like, maybe you could do some talk in your circles about, if there were some things that there was issues with, and that's where some of the word search kind of came through. I think C, D, E, and F, I generated by putting it through AI, and so that's where kind of we came up with whether those might work. And I think then it came to, how much of a discussion we wanted to have in terms of to go over the various ones, or if we wanted to just go ahead and vote. And I think with the voting, we talked about if we wanted to rank, so not quite the same as ranked choice voting, because we wouldn't go back to like the 50, but in terms of just ranking the various mission statements with, our first choice, second choice, and third choice. And then we could all add in the one that came out with, and the one that came out with the most points, with your first choice being worth 3 points, your second choice 2, and your third choice 1. If we put all those numbers together and came up with a total to see which one would win. I guess not.
Did any of the circles discuss this?
So we got busy with on our field trip.
Yeah, that was a great field trip. I would work there in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
So that media? Holy crap, excuse me, retaping.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was awesome.
Yeah, I meant to, we should type something up about the things that we learned on
Yeah.
our field trip.
That was,
Yeah.
what was.
Did you
We
see
should have
the,
presented.
oh, we're going off.
Yeah, no,
we're
We're
going
off
off
course.
So let's,
I think this, my only one comment I make is that I really like that we added the word training, because that's very important about what we do here, is train people. And, so I think A and, I don't know how we want to do this, but A and F are very similar, except one says facilitate engagement and the other says strengthen participation, which is different.
so,
That was interesting.
yeah, the sentences vary primarily just by like a word in some cases. Sometimes it's, I think in E, it was, accessible media resources. So we put all of training, production, training and distribution together as resources
Right.
rather than, and so, and I was gonna say, Chad, did you want to like talk about yours and?
I don't even remember now, it was too long ago. My favorites are C and E. I mean, clearly my number one and number two, C and D, and I wouldn't vote for any of the other ones, even mine that I wrote before.
Well, and also, yeah, the word, for me, the word distribution is a little bit problematic that way, because it's not clearly defined what is it that we're trying to distribute? Like in what capacity, what way?
I like how C and E are nice and
Right.
they encompass what we're doing, but they don't spell it out one thing at a time. Like the distribution, I think also.
Yeah.
Trips me up.
Yep, it does.
So do we want to vote so that we could just actually, between the two, like actually kind of come
So
up with one?
how would we vote? Is this,
So you can, if you want it to be,
It's a great choice.
you could,
Our favorite topic.
I was gonna say, you could do it, I have the sheets. And Palin, if you want to throw it in the chat, like which one is your first choice, second choice, third choice? I think that's kind of how we were thinking. And it could be, and then I'll put it in the grid and I'll just total it up.
Oh,
So,
cool.
So I have done
Sure.
the word distribution. I presume that the word distribution had something to do with the fact that we have archives of many of the things that have happened that we've done or attended or recorded.
vote.
And that we distribute that because somebody wants to have it for the record or hear what happened when they were out of the country for a year. And so we do distribute things that we have. So I didn't see why the word distribution was a controversial word.
for me, it's because the expectation then on the public is that we will be able to provide hard media sources. And how about if there's a drought of DVDs or there's, the technology doesn't exist, then we can't provide that service. So it's kind of like, because hard copies of things are kind of disappearing. So.
And the
okay.
word distribution in media means
Means-
like,
right.
yeah, being like a broadcast or, sold in that way.
Right.
That for me is what. I would.
Well, for me, it's not being able to provide certain services because we don't have access to the tech or the media itself.
Or is it just?
Okay. Fine, thank you.
I'm on
Yep,
board.
you're welcome.
Is it just the board members or?
I was like, I feel like we could vote too, but
Vote. Why not? If everybody, if nobody gets. How many, we're voting for all of them in order?
no, just three, your
Oh,
top
okay,
three,
okay,
and one being your first choice.
okay, I got it.
Okay.
So Palin, do you want to rank your D and F? Like,
Yeah, I think DNF, yeah.
so
They are
is,
so similar. There's one, like, one says free, one says open access.
Mhm.
So instead of, yeah, giving 1 to 3, I think these two will be my top choices.
So would you say D is your first choice or is your second choice? If you had to choose 1 to 2,
yeah, then let me check. F is my first choice.
F is your first choice. And then D is your second choice.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I can find choice 3 if you want, but okay, here you go. E is my third choice.
E is your third choice, okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'll have to make you all memorize.
Yeah.
I worked in a company where if the president came around and asked you to recite it, you better.
Oh, really?
be able To recite it.
I'd make it from about one day in the company before we get
Made
it.
it 20 years.
I always,
Where I worked in television and not a 9 to 5 sort of.
It was great. I moved home with my daughter. I got divorced and moved home,
There we
and
go.
my mom had to watch my daughter when the door. She said, "See that company? That's where you're gonna work." So all I went. Was there for
Oh,
20
really?
years,
So is it safe to say that you will tally this later on and we will?
So I was gonna say, I'm telling it right now, I made a grid, and so while I think I'm waiting for
But we
Dave.
need her for the budget.
And
draft
then
as well.
if you wanted to, I think we are on the agenda till,
And who's talking about,
Anticipation is building.
who's talking about the hypercast purchase?
that would be me also.
Okay, so,
So we're gonna vote on the mission statement. I mean, we're voting right now
Yeah.
and this will be official. We're
Right.
then after that, we're gonna vote on the top pick. Is that
right,
correct?
and we'll vote to
Like,
accept
like
it.
saying accept it.
Yeah. Is that the vote?
I did.
Okay, so I was gonna stick in mine too then.
Oh,
And
well,
CJ isn't with us, is she? She said
CJ,
she-
I'm
I
at
don't
the
see them
bottom.
there. No,
No, there.
And Jessica.
Yeah.
Just-
Was it?
Harsh light on my head.
Put
Flattering.
that hat back on.
I'm flattering with these studio lights. Gotta get some diffusion on.
if
this
you, it says
bad boy.
the source is too far from you, the light source.
I gotta get a.
That's lighting 101. Bring it closer to you.
We could
Softer.
do some.
My uncle made him, he had a hairdo like that. My uncle made him wear a hat with the light from the pool table was blocking. So, yeah, really.
That's.
Really, put your hat on.
All right.
Okay, so, we can, I can't do the hypercast.
I
or the
was gonna
budget.
say, did you wanna talk about we're on the budget till 6:50, we don't start that till 6:51, so if there's a little bit of time to talk about the visit if you want.
I'd like to hear about the visit.
Yeah,
Oh, I should have had did you see the pictures that I added?
I would
And
say,
Googled it? Do you take a look?
I would say we should leave it for the next. I would like to
Okay.
see, I would like to see the pictures. I would like to see
it is
context.
the
yeah.
most amazing place I've
Okay.
ever seen.
All right.
Oh my
Right.
God. They were very gracious. They're,
Yeah.
Where was it?
Yeah.
the media, it's hard to find it.
Who runs it? Who's the administrator?
Who's the executive director, the co-executive
Yeah.
directors there, I think. Yeah, we
Media
did a
Factory?
good tour.
So that's Jess Mobley or Seth Mobley and Jess. I lost her last name.
I can't think of it on the spot.
Blonde hair.
Yes,
Is it in
and
New York
she's,
State?
It's right in Burlington.
It's in Burlington.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
I
it's
thought
in
they'd
a,
gone
you
far
can't
away.
find this place for anything.
It's hard to find.
It
Very
was good to
good.
see their studio space. It was helpful to see, and we also learned a lot about their way that they did their production services and stuff like that
Great.
too. They were very generous and answered a lot
That
of
sounds-
questions for us.
What a
That's
great-
great.
I love
Great.
the booth they had for singing and whatever, that little,
The voiceover booth, the sound booth,
that
yeah.
was amazing.
Mhm.
To me, it's a voiceover booth. I guess you could also sing in there.
Yeah.
That's what it looked like, was just get somebody to go in there and sing, but
Thank you.
it was great. Okay,
okay, so I've double checked it and,
we had
so the winner, based on the votes here, was F with 11, once you convert like first choice to 3 points,
oh,
and
wow.
C was 10 points. It was just 1 point off.
Okay, so
So the first was what? Sorry?
F,
F. So
that was 1 and C was 2. You didn't even vote for C.
Oh, here it is.
So I need a motion to accept F as our new mission statement to replace the current mission statement. Somebody,
Read it to us now that we passed it in.
excuse me?
Read F. I gave her my F.
Oh.
Oh, so F is ORCA Media strengthens participation in local communities and government by providing free access to media production, training, and distribution.
Thank you.
I think that's excellent, but anyway, would somebody like to make that motion?
I'll move it.
Excellent, thank you. And we have a second,
I second it.
okay? Any comments? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? So carried. I'll have it memorized by next meeting, that would be good. All right, next is the 2025 budget draft. And it is that, a draft. What's the schedule, Jim, for approval of the budget? And that's so that we're ready?
So it's generally in the December board meeting is when it gets approved or accepted, and then it's effective January 1st.
Okay,
So hopefully by presenting it a little bit earlier,
Yeah.
if there's questions or if you want us to go back and do some more research
Yeah.
about anything, we're happy to do that. I think primarily the revenue, what we've done traditionally, or I've done, is take the lowest amount that we received from Comcast for the previous year or this year and use that as the budget number ongoing, because we know that revenues will be decreasing. So we've
Right.
taken the lowest number and put that in. So you see that based on that, comparing it against 2000, and that's what we did when we did the 2024. So even with the lowest number for 2024, we're still looking at a decrease about 21,000 on just cable revenue. It is a little bit offset by the government appropriations, so they're in the process of getting the paperwork done we received $1 million, Van did, from the government, and they decided to do a different distribution proposal for this year for the 2025 amount. So the previous year, they did the same amount for everyone, all the AMOs. This year, what they did was they looked at the population that the AMO covers of Vermont and took a percentage of that. They looked at the revenue loss that each AMO experienced and took a percentage of that to make a factor. And then they also did, another piece that was just a straight amount that was evenly divided amongst all the AMOs. And so combined with those three factors, came up with, we're expecting to get about 64,000 this year from the government appropriation. So I did put that piece in. So so I guess in the income side, just I think primarily because the government appropriations was a little bit more. So we are looking at it to be a little bit more than we expected or budgeted in the 2024.
So I have a question. So in looking at this budget, do you see any red flags in terms of things that might be needed in the future? Thinking about facilities, technology, whatever it is.
So for the expense side, what we did was I did increase, like you'll see in the mileage is way more than what we budgeted this year. I believe we'll be over on the mileage for this year. But if we're trying to go out to the locations more so, and so we're trying to get out to Rochester and Bethel, so we're starting to cover more events there besides just municipals, and so that's going to increase the mileage that we pay out. So, and if one of our goals is to be more present in the communities that we serve, then that's just going to increase in terms of mileage
Because we're sending people over there, right?
over there rather than have them come to us.
Is there a way, we haven't found a way to have local people cover this and?
I think it's
Like
finding
operators.
camera operators is hard just to begin with, and I think that we have one that's a little bit located, but we're not getting a lot of discount just because he happens to be in Chelsea, which is still a little bit, I think, getting to like the places, like unless they're right there. And I think we always try to look and try to get,
Right.
and I think our overall goal has been to try to get people as close to the location as possible.
Right.
And so I think Crispy, who's our camera operator, he has a kit with him at his house so that he doesn't have to come all the way up here and go back down. So
Right.
he's got a kit. So if we can get camera operators out there, we would
Right.
definitely try to. But I think also, so that's where the mileage will be, is much higher. I think the compensation, we also, we increased the number of camera operator hours as well,
Mhm.
just because I think we've started to do more,
Stuff.
I think more production heavy type events, so like multi-camera, so there may be, I think, sometimes there may be 2 camera operators on it, and so I think, so on that end, we did try to, and also if we're trying to expand, hitting those areas that maybe we don't necessarily cover by Comcast service area rules. That's also additional areas that we're going to be hitting,
So like
so.
a no man's land.
Yeah, so I think that's because we're being funded by the state. Are those, and I know that Van's also thinking about redistributing some of those towns that aren't covered by Comcast into one of our AMOs, just
Hmm.
so that, because the state is looking for, like, we're not.
Do we have special reporting requirements to the state because they're giving us $64,000? Above and beyond any other forms that we have to submit for taxes?
I think, so we always do the Rule 8, which is just for the Comcast funding, and that's, I think, the rule that we also send to the Secretary of State. When they send us the money, we also have like a budget based, we sent them like, this is what we plan on using that money for.
Okay.
And so we do submit a budget in the beginning saying, okay, this is what we would use it for, and then when the money comes and we do the closeout, we say, okay, this is how exactly we spent it.
Okay.
I'm sorry, you didn't put in anything about production revenue, and we had a long talk about, we haven't done anything about it, a long talk about charging.
So we did, and so that's the other piece of, I wasn't sure exactly how much to commit in terms of, we are starting to charge, and we're starting to some of the organizations that might be able to pay for it, and then we also have, I think, we've done a couple where it's like a sliding scale. We said, we would
Right.
like you to, and they said we don't have the budget, we haven't been saying no. So we're like, it'd be great if you could. And then there's some that are giving us a stipend or an amount that wouldn't necessarily correlate to how much we would have charged them.
This is the time to tell them while they're
So-
doing their next year's budget.
Is it possible then to organizations that I know that they don't have the budget to, but even, at a minimum, like set a minimum that just covers some wear and tear, or at least a little bit to put
break
back, and it
even.
could be very, like,
Yeah.
bare bones,
Right,
like
but
bare
that's making-
bones.
Making money,
Yeah.
because we don't.
It's one of the things that we heard about at Media Factory was that they have certain packages. So you get like a municipal package, and there may not even be like a large money exchange, but
Right.
it's like this covers X amount of meetings.
Right,
And like if we need to go above that labor cost wise and travel
Right.
wise, then you have to like kick in somehow.
right.
Which may or not be the best way, but it's definitely, I like the way it's sort of like sets up a
Yeah, the
system.
thing is, we have
Right.
to let them know now while they're planning next
Right.
year's budget, so it's in there.
So I think so that the system is that at a minimum, there's a little bit coming in to cover something, which might not impact the wear and tear on our gear, but at least it's something versus nothing, right?
So what does
So-
that 1,300 represent, Jim?
So that has been what was in there from before, like this year, we were able to, like, it pretty much is Norwich. So we did their military history symposium and we billed them. And so I think Norwich has been, they're happy to pay for it. And so
Great.
we invoiced them so that 1320 is really essentially Norwich. And so
And they didn't raise a stink or anything? They just
no,
said,
and we
"Yeah."
also, I think, we kind of prepped them and said, we're gonna charge you for the live
Right.
streaming. So that, I guess, is there a number, like, do we want to increase it do you want us to go through and look at all the different events that maybe we would charge? Because I think we were also, like, when we were talking about the cost structure, we're thinking like conferences, like a
Yeah,
lot of,
'cause
like,
that's a heavy duty for a conference.
and that's where, if they're making their budget for their next year's conference, I think we're busy. I think like this month, we were very busy and it's in the code director's report. but a lot of it was conferences that they wanted us to come and record
Like big,
or,
like all day conferences
Right.
with like breakout rooms and so, you know, people.
And you need to
So-
charge for that.
so I think on those, like, if we kind of say, let's start off with all the conferences. I think the only problem we have with the municipals and charging the municipals is I feel like some of the groups or some of the municipals are pretty like, not reluctant, but the beauty of us being free is primarily what drives them to use us.
Right.
And so I worry that if we say, oh, you get 2 free meetings, they're like, okay, then don't come, because it is like they have their Zoom meetings and they, you know, we can do better camera work, or it's a little bit easier to follow who's talking, but they're like, you know, we'll just do the Zoom. And then we lose out on being part of their like
Right,
coverage.
yeah, but we don't have money in Berlin to do that.
So that's
Well,
where.
right,
oh,
but you know, and again, I think having that conversation, just
Mhm.
having it and saying, you know, just a minimum so they understand, and the fact that, you know, you're offering a different distribution platform, right? Besides just the internet, you have other mediums, other
Mhm.
ways of distributing what's being recorded.
Well,
And the quality of
distribution. Yeah.
Well, you,
Yeah.
right.
It's in our-
You know, but
in our-
I mean, to qualify the word distribute, we have to be very specific on the things that we do distribute.
Mhm.
And at least, you know, to have the conversation.
And I think
And-
that we definitely are starting to develop more, like before it was like we
Right.
just kind of covered, but now with Sean and having a little bit more capacity to actually have those conversations of, you know, we'd like to, how can we help you get the word out? So if you're doing your community meetings or if you're having something go on for them to think about us. And I think that's also been kind of like, that was just trying to shift like them thinking about us.
Right.
And so it's like, you know, if they put us on their website, but it's like, you know, they don't necessarily link to the videos or so. I think it is, how can they use our distribution platform? Because I think they also are like, well, you know, it's,
Right. Or is there other ways in which we could capitalize, like in terms of advertising with them, like our presence in City Hall? Like, make it bigger, right? If there are other ways in which we could, you know, capitalize on that. That's not monetary, that's not money.
Right,
Trying to keep our services free
Right,
is an important thing. The
absolutely.
production revenue counters it a tiny, tiny bit, not enough to make a difference. But what would happen if we called it 40-40 production donations? You can call it revenue, we call it donations.
Right,
People
right.
that knew that they were getting a lot from us and
Right.
when we were free, but they donated something. Wouldn't that be just as easy to
Absolutely.
do?
and I think that we do oftentimes try to present it like, you know, we don't want to say it's a fee for us,
Right,
but it's
right.
like, you know, if they can
That's
maybe
why I was just thinking, you
Yeah.
just call it contribution.
Right.
contribute.
I like that contribution rather than what you said before that.
I had donations.
Yeah, but that sounds, I like that contribution. that
Right.
I think that in regards to production, I think in regards to like what's his name is here in the offices using the space, I think what we just need is a clear policy and system for
Right.
it. Like this is what is provided under the production, this is what like the agreement is to use the space here. And there is a cost or there isn't a cost, but it just needs some sort of structure.
Yeah.
Right now, it's sort of
You need to-
bespoke and chaos.
We should develop a policy, and I think like the conferences that last all day with breakout, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
That's just, and especially if the nonprofits, they usually have tons of people sponsoring them, so it's not like they don't have funds, but that would be
An
one.
immediate sponsor, if they know, you have to know what the thing costs though, for if you're that person
Right.
putting on the conference, then you put it in your budget. X amount for the media production, live streaming, whatever.
Right, right.
But if they don't know that and we're just like, oh yeah, I mean, I guess we show up with some cameras and you know, if you wanna do
Breakout
something, that's
sessions
fine
are-
too. It's like, okay, well, then I'll budget nothing for you.
When we're members of something like VAN, do other VAN organizations also have production revenue?
Oh, yes, like,
Yeah.
oh, Barry does.
Yeah, I'm sure they all do.
So what do they call it? Fees for service? I mean, I'm just trying to think what.
Yeah, I think
Yes,
so.
that is definitely a phrase that is
Okay,
used. fees
I
for
just,
service.
it just seems that I don't wanna get somebody picking at the budget and saying, you said it was a free access to blah, 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 and I see now there's revenue was involved. I was just trying to find a way to not have that discussion at
Right.
all. and still do what we
Well,
do.
that's where the policy should come out and be very clear. That something like a conflict of breakout, that the definite,
And you know, again, that structure, what Chad is talking about in terms of structure, it
Yeah.
could be if the organization is a for-profit and they're making for-profit on the event they're putting on, then
you
it's
can
kind of a
ask somebody
no-brainer,
for their
right?
copies.
For us, a little bit
You
versus
could
a
ask for
non,
their copies of their policies
Right.
and see. I think Tony would give us his.
That's right. That's why I wanted to get free out of the mission statement.
Mhm.
So we just voted it back in on that.
Mhm.
We can amend if we have to.
They could always change it.
Well, I think also it's that there's like there's a certain part of us, like the free resources, so like community producers using the equipment, I think that we do, and I think that's where that free was really kind of designed to go to, so that the people that may not necessarily know about us and may be offset, or like maybe like, oh, I don't want to pay for a camera. But it's
Right.
like, so that's, I think, where that is trying to kind of hit, like the organizations and some of those that are using us for like conferences would, I think, is pretty clear that that's not necessarily in that same kind of category of like community members and.
unless the conference is to provide services for the community, right?
Well, I was gonna say, because they do, like, so we just did the Maple conference, or like, it wasn't a conference, but it was
Mm.
the city put on with the resilience group, the public forum. I think that's where it's like the public forums oftentimes gets, like, we're there to kind of cover it so that people
Right.
see what's happening in their community, and that is free. And
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
it wouldn't necessarily, so it comes down to like, is it more of, you know, and so I think it is, you know, probably something to hash out in the policy. I don't want to get too far down just because to stay on time.
Right.
But so I will take a look at the conferences and what we've done and how much time we spent and what that might translate into like revenue. If we said, you know, we're charging for live streaming, this is what it costs. And then we could also, you know, the other thing that we don't do a lot of is underwriting or sponsorship. So if that's something, maybe like you could talk to when we talk to the groups, it's like, you know, if they want to come up with some sort of sponsorship group, someone who can sponsor them for the media resources. Might be a way.
hoping Montpelier Alive may,
Right.
I think they should. at
So,
some point, don't you think?
Mhm.
but that's an area that we haven't put much in the budget, so I don't know if we want to start investigating or going down the
Well,
sponsorship.
let's get the
route.
production,
So I will put the production, I'll take a look
Let's do
and come
that
up with
first.
some new numbers on that. The other bit was, so just going really kind of a little bit quick on the compensation. So we are asking for a 3% COLA on the full-time staff, not Zach and me, but Sean, who's our only full-time staff. So we would like to give his position a 3% COLA for the year. And then we did increase the number of camera operator hours, and that's where the salary, the compensation line is a little bit higher than what it was budgeted for this year. So, and I should say not a little bit of extra camera operator
And
hours. We did
where
put
is-
a lot of camera operator hours.
the money for the, Amity, where is that?
So that's under consultants, so it's 10,000. I kept the
Oh, I see.
10,000 amount, even though she budgeted 7,500.
Yeah, that's-
But I think that the board had approved 10,000 and we'd been kind of just
Mhm.
moving that over
Mhm.
every budget year. So I left it there. I think the accounting fees, I'm still trying to get like, I think I figured out what the amount is per pay. So it is a little bit, we're gonna be over this year as well. So I've made the adjustments to how much the accounting, and I did include the higher, although Amity is not doing our 990, but I put in the amount for the 990, which is $2,000, which is more than what we had budgeted in the previous years.
You guys are talking about Amity, what are you talking about?
The auditor,
It's,
JMN?
yes.
Okay.
We're talking about that.
And so
Is it also called Amity?
she's the
That's
auditor,
woman's
the
name.
audit
She's our
person
auditor.
that we've been talking to. So
Yeah.
the other thing that I did not do where we could adjust is within the capital expenses. So this year, and because of the Harriet or the Hypercaster purchase, I didn't put in the maintenance, which is normally what we would put in. So this year we have the 7,300, and that's normally what we would put in, but I didn't do that since hopefully we'll be getting a new one. So if it turns out that we're not gonna purchase it, I will go ahead and adjust that. So the other piece is that in software, before we'd been putting the Adobe licenses within equipment capital, so I just moved it out of there into software, and that's where you'll see that it's lower than before. I didn't make any changes to the amount of capital, but that's, I think, if we had the extra 7,000, it may be like we might look at updating or changing some equipment, but I left it at the same amount, and I didn't know if we were thinking, because we were gonna be purchasing so much with the Hypercaster purchase, so I didn't want to add more into the equipment for next year, but it would, like, we would love to be able to put more money into that equipment budget line.
And then the website.
Oh, well, that was, so the website is just, like, we saw like, it's much less
Wow.
than what it was previously, because I worked out, they had made some changes to their billing and we took advantage of that. So that's just lower, and we'll see the
That's a lot
savings.
more.
Yeah, well,
Wow.
We'll
Good
see
job.
the savings again this
Yeah.
year, because we made the change. And then I think rent is a little bit more, so it's a 3% increase, but now we're also paying property taxes. So VCFA, I don't think had been charging us our portion of property tax. I don't know why, but it's in the lease, and we would expect to do that. So the rent has been adjusted to reflect the property tax piece that we're adding, as well as just the 3%. So, so that was very fast,
Well,
and
thank you for all that work.
Yeah.
So we have,
I have one question about the software. You moved it over to what line?
I moved it to the software line from the equipment line. It's so in the previous years,
Which
you'll
makes
see,
sense, right?
yeah, and I think, I don't quite remember the story of why Rob had put it in the equipment capital line, but we are paying, and it may be that because we paid for a year amount, that's why it was in there, but we're paying for it monthly at the same rate as if it was year.
Hmm.
So I just stuck it in the software.
Right, and it makes sense, I mean, because it's leased, and right, it's
Mhm.
not yours.
Essentially, yeah.
so Jim, we have a meeting in November,
Okay.
and then you'll have the, a recommendation for production, fee for service, or whatever we want to call it.
So what I can do is, we don't have a meeting in November because we meet in
Yeah.
December, because it's every other month, our
Ah.
board meeting. But I'll send you the updated budget in November so that you can have it
Then ask
ahead of time,
questions.
and then, because theoretically in December is where we would agree
So
to.
depending on what we do with the Hypercaster tonight, you'd have to change those numbers too.
Well, the hypercap, so yeah, depending on what we do, that maintenance number may change.
Right,
Okay, so
okay, so I don't think there's anything to do tonight on this. Thank you very much. for all
if there was any other questions, I guess, or if there was any research you wanted me to take a look into.
Does anybody, ever say anything to the board,
Amity?
our auditor? Isn't that the auditor?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, no, she's who we're hiring to
I
do,
know, but does she ever report back as an auditor?
oh, yes, to us for sure.
Do we get the audit from her?
Yes.
Yeah.
I haven't read it, so.
No,
we
this-
haven't
that's-
started
the
it.
audit isn't done yet, well, that's just.
Oh, we didn't have one last year?
No, we
No.
haven't had one in years.
Okay, well, that's why I was
Oh,
in
I'm sorry,
fog.
yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Pardon me.
She's brand new to us. And I was lucky enough to find her through a friend who's also an auditor, but they do really big companies.
Well, I was relieved to hear there was one.
Yeah, well, I've got two names and she just jumped at it, and the actual firm comes very highly recommended.
Thank you.
So Jen, can I say, Jen, to research a possible production revenue, or what are you gonna research and what are you gonna look into?
I'm going to present you with a new production revenue amount in the budget in November. By November,
Based on what we could do.
yes. And so I'll make that
But I think,
adjustment.
the idea of having a written policy is very good,
Mhm.
and make sure it's on the web and.
I think that it could be a thing that to set up a meeting with the directors at something like Media Factory or someplace else or if they have, it sounded like they're like, it's not super written, carved in stone there either. It's like most of the people still get the things for free, but there's at least a policy.
And I think we do have the Media Factory policy, so when we came up with the
Oh,
fee for
good.
service, like of how we broke it down, I think we did reference the Media Factory, so I'm happy to send
Yeah,
that.
that's why I was
Get
asking
money
about
from
van,
somewhere.
you know, what they do.
Yeah, and I think, and I can also ask if there's
Okay.
other, organization, like other bands that might
Right.
have those.
Yeah, I'd like to just see how everybody else handles the same
They have
issues.
money,
So,
okay, yeah. Serious.
all right, so I'm gonna,
So.
did we go to the hypertext?
Yes.
level?
we
Yeah,
did.
okay,
Jump right
okay,
into the
okay,
hypercast
so-
purchase. You were talking a little bit about it at the last meeting and.
so, yeah, and
I'm trying to remember why was it that we saved it?
I
I
think
think,
it was a big,
for us.
kind of a big decision, and it was at the end,
Right.
like
We
maybe.
We were tired and we could not
Yeah.
vote on it because we were very tired and it was a lot of
I
money.
found it rather confusing, so I didn't know.
It was a lot of money.
Yeah,
that
sounds good, okay.
so, so just a recap of the hypercaster. So the current hypercaster we have that we use to, broadcast to the channels is at its end of life. So they are no longer servicing it. They're actually, so it becomes, and I think it's also primarily that because they're no longer maintaining it, our maintenance contract is ending as well. And so if something goes wrong, there isn't any way to really kind of fix it because we don't have the knowledge to be able to do that. I mean, we could do some
10
pieces.
years old.
Yes, and it is, I mean, it's fairly old. So we've been talking to Telview about the new version and coming up with the best way to which version we would want to get to. There are, of course, you know, with everything new, there's more things that it can do. And I think we tried to kind of minimize all the pieces that, like, because it can do so much more, but it's not necessarily something we need it to do. So I tried to stick with the equivalent of what we've got current, and then with the space, if we wanted to bring in the extras to be able to use them on that particular piece of equipment. So I think, and so the proposal that you have is really trimmed down from all the extra bits that they normally tried to put on so that it's, you know, it's pretty much doing everything it does right now. But it does have, like, if we wanted to start streaming live to YouTube, our channel, it has the ability to do that. We don't have to necessarily put it in play, but it is, it's able to do that. And the other piece was we went with a little bit bigger hard drive space.
Mhm.
So that, even though right now we have like, I think 11, and I'm shifting pieces out and putting them onto the archive, so they're not actually on that machine. So having it a little bit bigger gives it a little bit more space where I don't have to constantly be moving pieces of content off that one to make space for the next one. So it's a little bit, it's handy for me. But in terms of, I think the other piece was if we buy it this year, we don't have to pay for the maintenance because the maintenance, that 7,300 comes due in December. And so we wouldn't pay for that maintenance and we get a free year. So we'd have next year free, and that's why it was in the budget. If we chose not to purchase the hypercaster this year, they're like, you know, we don't want to completely leave you out, but they're like, but you would have to buy 2 years worth of maintenance for you to stay on this machine. And so that would mean that we'd be paying 14,000 for just the maintenance when it's, you know, getting the new machine would come out to be about 30,000. So it made sense to just do the new machine now, get the free year, which is a savings of 7,000 next year, and we wouldn't pay the 7,000 that we had budgeted this year. So that's where it was.
And how long does all this take if we said yes tomorrow, what would happen?
I think it's scheduling them to come in. I think we would want them to be closer in December so that it's not, so that that year starts in January. So we get a free year of maintenance. So I'd like it to start in January.
Are they in Mount Laurel, New Jersey?
Yes.
Oh.
So they come and I think, so on that end, I think it's like a day or two for equipment transfer.
Yeah.
So it's not that much, but I think it's primarily of the timing of purchase that we're trying to get it to be, and they said, even though our maintenance is due in December, if we said we're buying it in December, they wouldn't charge us for it, and we'd just get that month to have that, so then we
That's
could really
Yeah.
start in January and get that free year.
Was the old one from Teleview too?
Mhm.
Oh.
Okay, so there's no trade-in on the old one.
There is,
There
you'll see it
is.
at the bottom,
Oh,
so
I'm
us
sorry.
returning Harriet, we get 3,500.
Okay, thank you.
Is there information on our old one that gets transferred to?
Yeah, they'll do all that
Okay, so we
transfer,
don't
yeah,
lose
no, we wouldn't lose
any
anything.
Risk of losing anything?
Yeah, and that's why we would use them, because they're used to
Right,
like transferring it, and so they
okay.
know all the pieces to bring over to make sure we end up just ready to schedule and broadcast.
And will we have any downtime?
I
while-
believe there was a couple hours when we moved
Yeah,
up here,
moved up here.
there was, like, we brought them up to move the equipment over, and there was, I believe, a couple hours. I feel like it was like only a couple hours.
yeah, I
It
think
was
it was
very fast.
Like an hour or two,
But
maybe.
they didn't have to migrate data on that time, right? It was just plugging everything up.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
plugging
the
up, but I
same.
think the migrating might happen at the same time, like the machine doesn't need to be necessarily down, I believe, for it to migrate the data over. So and I can get more answers about that, but my understanding from when I spoke to him, that it would be similar to the downtime that we experienced when we moved up here.
Mhm.
So I can find out for sure about the
So what
downtime.
amount of money are we talking about here?
So the grand total is about 30,000, so it's on the second
182,
page.
that's what I'm looking at. The first section appears 30,983.
So it's safe to say that it would be, the text would, transfer the data. There's
Yeah.
nothing like-
Yeah.
Am I wrong in thinking about it with the deferred or reduced maintenance, it'd sort of be like 30 minus 14?
Yeah.
In that sense?
Yeah.
That's what I was also looking at, so it's, if we can time it just right, then I think it is.
Oh, and they're giving us 3,500 for trade-in, that seems reasonable.
Hey,
Yeah. Oh, it's too good.
Especially this 10 years old.
So are there other other rivals of Hypercaster? I know there are other companies that are selling the same kind of equipment.
There's only one other kind of big one. But since we're already in this.
We've
like,
been
No, I wasn't
ecosystem-
asking us to change. I was just
Yeah.
trying to see how,
We've been
what this
using this
business
so
is.
much, so long
This is
that,
the most popular, and since we're all kind of in the ecosystem, it'd be a really easy
Right.
integration.
And you're used to
To
it.
get you
Yeah.
hooked, to get you hooked on
Yeah.
the system. You can't-
Like my Apple stuff got me hooked.
Okay, I just was curious.
so what we're doing is, are we gonna vote on this
Yeah, we're gonna vote
tonight?
on it tonight.
Is that what's happening at some point?
And I think the other question that came up last time was also about financing it, whether, like, I don't know if that question needs to be put in before the voting of yes, let's purchase
What are you
it.
proposing?
Well, I think it was, CJ may have talked about, like, do we I didn't know if there was a question about, like, the best way to finance it or the best way. I think there was mention of it'd be great to find a grant. I don't think we'll be able to find a grant in
Not
time.
that quickly.
Yeah, and so that was one of the questions that came up about being
Is
able
that
to,
CJ on the
Yeah.
bottom?
so, and
It
then
is.
I think,
Hi there.
Nice.
so. Did I get that right, CJ, about, like, was there a question about the best way to finance it? Or the best way to purchase the Hypercaster?
Harriet's replacement.
Yes,
Yeah, my
Harriet's,
thought was that, exactly. Yeah, my thought was that it was a good topic for a grant because, it's so central to the mission of ORCA. The thing is, it's a good excuse to learn, but certainly I can't see that the board wouldn't authorize the money if a grant wasn't possible or through.
Is there a way in which we could put Sean or somebody to kind of suss out if there are any grants out there for this and to prep it, before the time is due, like set a date maybe, I'm not sure. Because I know it is a timely matter, right?
Mhm.
But is there a way in which, let's say, Sean starts looking into this week, next few
Do
weeks,
we
and
know
has
places
something
for-
by December written up and maybe possible?
I think we could definitely start taking a look. I worry that even like once, like it's such a short time that we can look, research it and then like the application and the decision. So it'd be also maybe we'd look for grants that it's reimbursable. So could we spend the money,
Right.
buy Harriet, and then can the grant come in and we can use it to
Right.
reimburse ourselves? So I would say we can take a look at the grants
Okay,
for that and see if there's something along those lines. I don't know if that's something that's done often within grants of like applying for it for something that we already
Right.
purchased.
but we're gonna purchase this in is it January or?
December, end of December.
The
We wanted in
invoice-
this,
Yeah,
this
but the
year.
invoice would be this year.
Yes.
It would be in December this year. Mhm. Okay, so do we vote on this saying yes to this? With the caveat that we might be looking into grants also, and if they appear before, if we could get the money before this,
Mhm.
use that money? Is that
Can I
okay?
ask,
Is that
do you
legal?
know if there are special places that you can go to for public access grants? I mean, where I wouldn't even, I was trying to look one day and I used to do grants all the time at state government, but they were things I knew.
Yeah,
Where do you look for these types of grants? Do we even know?
I think the thing, check with the people who do public access television. We could do a fundraising drive, help ORCA replace Harriet. It strikes me that we can do this, ORCA can afford to do this, but we also can see the declining revenue stream and we know we need to learn how to do this, and it's a great opportunity. So my feeling would be that we could do an approval of the funding if the community doesn't step up and just know that, we're borrowing a little bit against our future. But I mean, I would very much support that. And I also, Jen and Zach, and given the resources that you command, do you have time to go after a grant?
I think it would be tight, and especially with the turnaround time, especially if we're aiming for December, it becomes, I think, it would be hard. And especially since it's a learning curve of like, we have access to like a grant database, and so we can do some researches in a database, but it is also, I think, just coming up with the terms, and so there is that learning curve of getting into the grants and doing the grants and filling out the grants. And so whether that can be done within this time frame, I would say I'm happy to try, but I have to, like, I don't know that it would be possible.
Okay, but there is also, there's a lot of organizations that have foundations that have money, $3,000 here, $4,000 there. Like I'm thinking
Yep.
Ben and Jerry's has a foundation and they give money. I've received money from many different foundations for my school for programs. Like if I need $3,000 to travel to Atlanta, I created this letter, said, hey, we're doing this. Can you support us in our mission to get there? We could probably do that.
Yeah, that I
That's
actually.
fairly easy. Like I do this in a week and send out many letters to everybody. And sometimes money comes back,
Mhm.
right? And if you get,
Yeah.
2,000 here, 4,000 for the Telview, then that's something that we saved.
mhm.
Exactly.
Grant-
Jen and Zach Jen and Zach, have you done this before? Because if not, I haven't either, and I'm intimidated. I don't know if you feel the same way.
No,
So-
Whereas
I know.
Carlos,
I have.
Yeah, Carl,
I do it all the time.
I've done grants, but not in this environment.
right,
I search, there's a whole list, which I could send this week of foundations that,
That'd be interesting.
give money.
We could do that.
yeah, and
Good.
yeah, we gotta,
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
but
I'll look through our database too. We
there's
have,
some hedge fund people that, that pass away and they have this foundation with money to every year. They support schools, nonprofits for
When did we
different
actually,
endeavors.
when did we buy the old, Hypercaster?
2015.
2015? Did we have a large discussion about, at the board of it, or did we just say we need it and just went ahead and bought it?
what was that for that we took against the investment? Remember that we paid back over time?
I'm just trying to make.
You and I,
Yeah,
I was there, I was
there
there.
was,
I was there in 2015, and I think we voted, it was
Well, we
voted,
did,
and
there's
was,
not much
it was.
of a-
they-
No, I'm just-
I remember,
I mean, reason I'm asking
right,
is that if we bought it in 2015
Right.
and it's done now, we got a 9-year out of it.
Right.
right.
Is there a guarantee that we'll get another 9 years out of this one? Like,
I
I'm
think
just
it'd be
I just wanna know,
Right.
is there a warranty when we buy something at this amount of
Yes.
I
money?
hope so. for
That it's
that.
supposed to last
Find
a
out
certain
what their
period of
end of
time?
life is for the new
Yeah,
server.
I'd just like to know how if
Okay.
it's gonna replace something, I'd like to be able to.
Trade-in, that's not bad. They gave us 3,500 against it.
Right.
well, isn't that what the service thing, the yearly service is for? So
Yeah.
if something breaks, they overnight. ship
Right.
it
But
or-
I'll find out what,
Okay, I
because,
just wanna,
because everything does, like, it seems like things get made a little bit cheaper and cheaper every year, so if their end of life is
I
not.
think what you're getting at,
Yeah.
Dave, is that there's an assumption that if we buy something, we're upgrading, if it's a big purchase, that we should then, from that point on, we should start setting up a system, and how are we gonna get money for the new system?
right.
Because this one is gonna go also at some
It's gonna
point.
go at some point.
We were talking about borrowing from our investments and paying it back over time.
I think that was
think that's-
CJ,
CJ.
that was CJ.
How does that work, CJ? Would that apply
No.
here?
well, there was what I'm trying to find out is under Rob as executive director, ORCA made a loan to itself essentially and paid itself back with interest. And it was from the investment. What I don't know is what that loan was for, but it was substantial. It was like $64,000 or more.
Yeah, I
I feel like it
remember.
must
remember.
be Bellevue then, because that's the only thing that we
Right,
have.
I think it was, yeah.
That doesn't.
So that was how we,
To look into that, maybe?
yeah. And Jane, did you say that?
Because building relationships with these folks you're talking about, it does take a little bit of, where if you just send, if they need to know of you or,
Well,
and have some relationship.
I
with
think
them.
these foundations, the way that I do it, I have the letterhead from the organization.
Mhm.
It's a nonprofit. You state very clearly in a few paragraphs, this is what we need, this is what we do, and this is what we're seeking to get. That's it. It's just it's a
Mhm.
one-page letter that I send out.
Yeah. I'm trying to
Carlos,
know.
would you work with
Okay,
Jen and Carlos,
Yeah.
would you be willing to with anybody who wants to work with you to get a couple sent out? I mean, this is a skill that we need that you have.
Right. You know, and I could certainly, I could provide, again, I'll provide the list and I'll provide the letters that I've sent out
Okay, I'll have
to
Right.
the organizations
Yeah, that'll help a lot.
and,
begging is part of my.
right,
campaigning
absolutely.
techniques.
Yeah, so I could certainly do that.
No, it's a skill I need
I'd
to
like
learn
know
as
about
well.
the borrowing from ourselves, part and how that works.
Can we, so Jen and Zach and everybody else, how much time do you think you could carve out over the next month to work on making this attempt? Understanding that it may not, it may yield a little, it may yield nothing, it might cover the whole thing. It's a crapshoot from
Right.
right. But how much?
These guys are beyond stressed. Every time I've been in this office, they're not looking for things to do, right?
No, exactly.
You are a little
say-
behind
Mhm.
in editing, just saying.
So
Yeah.
I would say I'm willing to put like 5 hours per week and maybe increase it depending on if, they're like to start the research. And I was gonna say, I would probably do that, like, so maybe 5 to 10 hours a week I could probably put towards this.
That's a good amount of time. Carlos, what do you think? Do you think with that we can do a skills transfer?
I think we could, I probably can't do 5 hours myself, but I could probably do an hour, maybe or two, for sure. But I think, I think if you devote 5 hours, I think that's plenty. It really is.
Great.
Because the letter, once you generate one letter,
once we
it's
see
about
your letters,
replicating
then
and
we'll
changing
start-
the name of the
That'd be-
foundation and sending out to
Just
different
scratch your name
foundations,
out, put our name in.
right?
And do we already have,
A template, a template.
Nice to
Yeah.
Yeah.
My question on this is, what is our risk, timing wise? When do we need to confirm in December to get our perfect swap at the end of the year and
I
get
know,
both
it's-
both $7,000?
I
Is
think,
that a risk that we miss out on one of the $7,000?
so I think what it is the end, if it's the end of December and I can talk to our sales rep, it becomes like, it's not that we miss out, but that we might, then I can see if we can push it, that they're like, okay, you needed to commit, and since you didn't commit, you're now, like, you have to pay 14,000 for the next 2
Yeah,
years
that's-
maintenance, and then you need to decide. And so that's where it's, I think, the end of the end of the year, he kind of gave me as like, this is when you need to commit, and so we've been. So I can, and I will double check with him that there isn't like a monthly way, but it is like, we've been kind of pushing it and being like, okay, we're trying to get it to the lowest amount as well as, putting it in front of the board. And so it is kind of like, we're pushing it. So it may be at some point that he's like, you need to either re-sign up for that maintenance because you're not gonna get it and you're gonna just you have 2 years now to try to come up with that money.
Well, this is my
Yeah.
fear, and we're talking about voting on it in a board meeting right before the December holidays, and so that's what I was curious about, is
I would
is the
suggest,
danger of that
yeah, I
time.
would
Yes.
suggest we approve spending of the money and then work on the other things. If they come in first, then we use that money instead of the budget money. But we should commit to this.
Yes,
Mhm.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
And I mean, it
I-
doesn't
I-
stop
I
us
second
from
that.
finding the money.
I second that too.
Okay.
That's reasonable.
Okay, so I guess
So
you can't,
I can't make a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the spending of the money for the, what is it, Stratocaster, Telecaster?
Hypercast.
AIO,
And attempt to raise money for it, to defray the cost.
and
Is there a second to the motion?
well, I just want to make sure if we second the motion that includes that we get the, free Hypercaster archiving, module
Oh,
with it.
Yes.
So we're not just getting the hardware, we're voting on money for the hardware and the free Hypercaster module underneath. Is that what we're voting on?
you are giving Jen some negotiating tools. Good on you. I agree.
So do you want to amend the motion?
Yes, and we're looking for a second,
we're
right?
looking for a second now to Chad's motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, seconded. Any comments, further comments? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That made sense.
Yeah.
And thank you all.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes, which are lovely done by our scribe here.
Yeah.
Good job, seriously.
Mm.
You write it so I can understand it and word it. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes, and we can wait a few minutes if people haven't read it?
I am a little behind so I apologize. I'm diving in.
So moved.
Helen, did you make a motion so moved?
Yeah.
Did she? Okay, good, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there a second on the minutes?
I seconded, although I feel kind of weird doing that, but I seconded.
Okay, good, very good, thank you, Carlos.
All right, you
All right,
welcome.
any comments on the minutes? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? So moved, thank you, Pamela. All right, next on the agenda, oh my God, is financial reports. It's been so much time.
So. BJ, do you want to go first?
Sure. in short, the good news is that, thanks to Jen, so I spoke with Edward Jones today. And for the last couple of times, I had been their office assistant was there, but the work was not there. So the good news is we should have online access set up shortly. She sent me the 3 invitations today. Our current account total balance is actually just under 500,000 as of September 27th. And that is up 40,000 from a year ago. The CDs, if you recall, I had opted to terminate our laddered CD just because there was some strangeness with market rates varying, and so I grabbed a couple of slightly longer term CDs, given that there was enough cash in the bank for our ORCA operating expenses to be assured. And so we were actually yielding at 5.45% for one, with a maturity value of 80,000, and 5.3% for another with a maturity value of 50,000. So that just credit to Jen for moving some cash that was sort of COVID found money that was sitting in a bank, the local bank, at like, less than 1% over to the EJ account. Still have the Verizon corporate bond that Mike Doyle had bought, yielding 5.85%. That's going to be maturing in 2035. It's not a lot of money, the $6,000 maturity value, but it's there. The remaining stuff is various American bond funds, and an FT investment grade multi-asset. So those will, as soon as Pat and I have finished signing, those will all start to shift into different bond funds. But right now, bottom line is things are invested the same way Mike Doyle invested them, other than this, and we're in pretty solid shape. Any questions or comments?
Great.
No, the only comment I have or question is I have this set as CD1 and CD2 as a name right there. That's fine.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah. If you want, I mean, the actual CD names are too interesting, but they're both JP Morgan issues. And they may change, if once they mature, we'll swap them into something else. And that's it. Just, we continue to stay in pretty conservative vehicles, thanks to the fact that against all logic and sense, the market continues to go up. We're going up with it.
Right. Thank you.
And we have go up like our largest investments.
Let me know when we can go
drop.
once you go sign the documents. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, the big thing.
You have to grab lunch.
Stuck on the farm here.
Well, as soon as
I think they'll sign with me at HE on Randolph and you signing at EJ in Montpelier, because that's your preferred location, right, Pat?
Yeah, it's just like where would we sign it?
You can sign here in Montpelier.
Oh, yeah.
And CJ can sign in Randolph.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
The odd thing is just that we either all need to sign electronically via like fax, or we all need to sign in person. I have no idea why it doesn't make sense, but their deal. So, yep. So we'll do in person. You'll go. You're mostly in Montpelier, right, Pat?
Yeah, I live in Berlin, but I'm always in town.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. So that would be the thing.
Oh, thank you very much for both you and Jen. Good job. Okay, we're moving along. Any more questions? We can move along. Co-directors reports. Who's up?
Yeah.
Or
We did it together. We did it separately.
What?
the co-directors, and so we could do it because we are running low on time. So I just wanted to
Motion to accept this.
Financial.
Motion to accept the financials. I didn't know we did that. A motion to accept the financials. Carlos, was that a motion?
It is a
It
motion.
is a second.
I can second it.
Okay, good. Any further questions or discussions? All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next is co-director's report. You wanna, how do you wanna do that? Just.
So I was gonna say, we can just maybe really quick go through it, like highlight stuff. Do you want to do?
Sure, we can do, so we did a lot, I think,
Seriously.
in the last few months, probably in the almost 10 years I've been here, this was the most we've done.
That's great.
A lot of live streaming, those conferences. Each thing with its own challenge.
Mhm.
Took a lot of weekend stuff. One kind of big thing, where is it? Is we started doing sports, so we were kind of getting our feet wet and doing Montpelier High School sports, which I don't think ORCA has done before. We always, when Rob was here, we would buy the games from
Paul Parton,
Carl Parton.
he's not doing it anymore?
No, I think he's doing it, but a lot of the sports are under contract with other companies.
Really?
I
I thought he
So
was
we-
the man.
Well, yeah, I think he probably has kind of contract with them.
We're not
Um,
covering them live though. are we?
Yeah,
We are.
yeah. And,
Wow.
so we picked kind of the games that weren't getting coverage as much, particularly because they're outside. They get internet outside. So it's sort of trying to find the workflow and experiment, but we did boys and girls soccer and field hockey.
That's great.
For Montpelier,
Yeah, for this Montpelier.
not for East Montpelier, just for.
No,
not-
I think we started with Montpelier just because it's closer that we could
No,
figure
no,
out the
I-
workflow, but
Yeah,
the U32, I think are next, like to expand out, so it's also, it's winter time, so it's also, we'll see. But I think our goal is to, once we've figured out the good workflow, is to go out to U32, and I think part of the other piece that the Montpelier High Athletics Director wanted us to do is their away games, to get those live streamed, and so we wanted to make sure that we could do the home games and get the internet and the live stream, but then the next step is also to go with them to the away game so that the parents can see that.
Do we do that in a van or do we do that in a school bus with the students?
No, we would drive ourselves and you'll see it in the mileage.
Yeah, with the
Okay, I was just trying to figure out how we did it.
So I think I think the sports was something that we'd been talking about, that it would be something, and being able to make contact with the athletic director was great, and Sean kind of had that, so that they were excited for us to offer to do the sports, and they were really excited to get us to, and they worked with us in trying to figure out the best way to do it. And so I think it will work well, and as spring comes, we'll be more prepared. Winter might be, I'm not quite sure exactly
yeah.
what we'll cover in the winter, but it's being part of our regular workflow as events that we cover. And then I think I'm gonna just go through the community producer stuff. So I think Sean has also been going into the schools so part of the relationships that he's been developing at the schools is looking at other extracurricular clubs to make contact with. So I think we were talking about like the journalism club rather than, so I think he's kind of expanded from filmmaking to like, maybe more toward the journalism or news, and getting them to come in to maybe do a show, or maybe to borrow equipment to go out and do some of their local journalism. So I think we're starting to try to look at other groups that maybe could use us, that may not necessarily follow the normal traffic. This is what they could use us for.
So this page that says live stream, conferences, community events, municipals and school boards, this is all stuff that we've done.
Yeah.
And these are the new stuff. So these were highlighting like not part of the regular municipals or the regular, these
Yeah,
were
This
like
is on top
extra.
of what.
Well, I'm totally impressed.
And this isn't everything. I cut with a few things too.
So I think that part was, so just also to go quickly about the van advocacy group and the statewide and what we're doing. So we are in the budget for the Secretary of State. We're asking for this year, we're asking 1.35 million van as an entirety. And I think the Secretary of State has agreed and
How much?
1.35 million for 2026. So they're very supportive, and that's the amount that we're requesting as part of the Secretary of State. And because it's a little bit different that we're part of the base funding. And so even though they still have to go in, it's not us going for a short-term fix like we had been doing. So I think I've added a sheet about what the legislative update at the end, and you can kind of see like what the plan is for the funding requests. So they did like 26 is 1.35, but they are ending up at 2 million by 28. And that's the Secretary of State has agreed to this as well. And so I think the next steps for that is we're there to provide, support to the Secretary of State if they have questions about what we're using, why we need it. But it's also, we'll be touching on the candidates and the legislators so that we can ensure that they are supportive of community media. And so when this comes up, that they also will be supportive. And I think, so the next steps here for us would be, we're making contacts with the legislators and the candidates and just staying high and introducing if they're new, and to let them know about community media and how we would love their support. So if you know legislators and people running, and if you want to, hopefully this little handout might help with the what we're asking.
Yeah, that's a great thing to have.
But
So this is the last sheet. This is Van's request
this is yes,
for the 1.35 million.
yes.
Okay.
And it gives a little context, and if, so some bullet points of how we're essential. So if you do know legislators or candidates and you see them, if you could, push us, and that'd be great. And that's, I think, probably very quickly done for the co-director's report.
Oh, thank you. Do we have the circles of reporting in this week, or we're gonna do it some other time?
So we did a little bit at the beginning with the strategic plan when we did the mission,
Oh,
but
that's true. Yeah.
so I think it's next month we'll have circles meetings again.
Okay,
So if, and then we tried to keep it as a line item on the agenda as like the report
okay.
back out from the circles
I
meetings.
would
So
like to, I think we should talk about where we went. That was ridiculously
So we'll
unbelievable.
put this in new business when we get there,
Yeah,
or next month, right?
next month.
next
right.
month.
Yeah,
So
'cause I think Zach said he has pictures of that place.
Yeah, from the Google.
Yes, he's still my heart.
Okay,
That
so
other place up in Franklin. Anyway, okay, moving on to old business.
I think we still have, do we have to accept this or?
Oh, do we accept
Co-directors.
that?
No, we
I
don't,
don't
right?
think so.
It's just,
Just listen to the report.
Yeah,
It's
just
just
look
the
okay,
report,
good. Old business is outreach to jam in spring. What is that?
I think
Jam, but
that might fall just within your facilities. It's just been kind
Yeah.
of hanging out of
Okay,
like
all right, take it out
interest,
second.
reaching out to jam.
I think maybe I could use your help, and because I tried reaching out but never heard back.
Oh, yeah.
But because she knows you, I think maybe if you reach out.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Well,
Talked to her on email last week.
okay,
So
We
you
talking
have to
about
get in touch with
Montpelier Live? Are we talking about Montpelier Live?
No,
No, we'll
we're
be
in
talking
touch with
some-
her.
White, oh, yes, we are.
So-
White River, the access station White River.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. I didn't recognize what jam was.
So we were wanting to go down there and see them?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's,
that'd be cool.
we have to figure it out.
Well, we'll hold that one off for another day. The audit letter, you all just received it. We just got this yesterday, and our apologies for not, because it goes on forever. CJ read it and approved it. Jim and I read it and approved it. The only thing that I wanted to make sure is that where it says management responsibilities that we can, it's on page 2, that we can respond to all those things, and if that's okay. It lays out, and this, a friend of mine, Fred Duplessis, who's out of here, out of Barry, and he has he's with a big firm, and we wrote him a letter, and he pretty much said we're just too tiny, but he was very kind about the way he said it, rejected us. But I said, could you help us come up with some people? And he gave me Amity's name, that they do small nonprofits like us all the time, and she was very gracious. We met her and had a Zoom call with her. And this is a lot to read. What I would suggest, if we can, you read it, and what I would need is the authorization, you, myself, and is that CJ, is that you signing this too under, or is that them under governance? It must be them.
I'm not entirely sure. I did want to, I emailed Pat to say I think it would be very beneficial for the board to
Yeah.
read this carefully, and then for us to go through it with the board,
Yeah.
as much for the fact that what this audit will not do as for what it will do. But as you know, I was the one that said, gosh, it's only been 20 years or whatever it is, we should do one. The thing that Jen pointed out, because I was a little bit concerned about some of the things that it wasn't going to do, and I won't go into it, but Jen said, what we as the management, because we're the board, right, that are looking to get is essentially business process improvements. Jen, do you want to explain to the board what you felt that this would contribute to ORCA's overall health and long-term longevity? Because I thought you put it very well, and Jen did a good job of codifying to me how this provided a good next step for ORCA. And then I just wanted to point out to the board what it will not do. Not that we have concerns, so we're not looking for this, but just what it won't do. So Jen, over to you.
So I think what I just said was what we would be getting out of the audit is hopefully some best practices, as well as there would be looking at how we do things and saying, if there were any concerns, if they are like, you should maybe do it this way instead. So hopefully, and I think that what I was mentioning to CJ was when we talked about whether to do a financial review or an audit, was that the audit would come back with some recommendations by looking at it. And that's what we wanted, were these recommendations that we could say, this is what is good practices, and this is how we're going to be doing it from here on out, and have it kind of listed out as these are the things that we saw maybe you weren't doing or you could do better, and take those recommendations as our best practices and move forward so that we are following those guidelines. And I think in that way, it's not necessarily that I think a lot of the accounting practices were like kind of handed down, but not really kind of listed out. And I think that it gives us an opportunity to actually kind of write down these accounting policies and best practices.
Right.
Did I get it,
Yeah,
CJ?
at the end of each audit, they give a management, they give what's good, what's bad, and then the board holds folks accountable to addressing those issues, which they lay out.
Right. So basically, after this audit and the recommendations, you're just gonna list the practices we're gonna follow. This is it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they
This is what
pretty
we're
much
doing.
spell that out in the
Right.
letter, and then you follow it, because
Yep.
it's what you pay for.
Okay.
What I would like to suggest, I don't want to sign this vote tonight, because I want you to read this. And if maybe in a week, we can vote by mail if that's allowed. So I will sign it and get it to Amity. I love her name. It's on, what is that house in Long Island, Staten Island?
So Pat, would it be because we approved an audit, would it be that we don't, like, if there was issues, like it's like we would just go find another auditor that would do something differently? Is that what would
Well, I don't
happen
know
if they
what
said
this-
no? Like, if there was something in here that's like, say, someone disagreed with or wasn't wanting to
Yeah, then
do.
we would either see if she'll fix it, or we go back, there's not too many
Yeah.
folks out there.
I think for this,
Yeah.
if we have 3 people who have gone through it, who
Yeah,
read
that's
it
what-
and,
and you're
and who
comfortable.
approve, and we're comfortable with its recommendations, so you're just adding things, not taking things away.
Yeah, and this
Right.
hasn't been done in a long time, and I'm very much in support of this.
I say we just, we're okay with this and sign it
Yeah.
and move on, right?
Well, you did give us somewhere in the past, we got permission to do this. I just want to give you the opportunity to read the letter if you want to. Because it takes a little doing to read this letter. I read it
Nothing.
some paragraphs more than
Right.
once. Because it was a
Right.
Yeah.
little confusing.
Okay,
I finally got it, but it took a while.
Would you like to, so that it doesn't just sort of this open-ended thing, to have like a clear, like say, is there 1 week and if you don't, you two submit problems to you and
Right.
not submitting problems.
Means you're
case-
okay,
in
that's
case of-
excellent, unless we can set up an actual date, and if I don't hear from you, silence is golden. And, and then we will, so how about,
Exactly.
November 1st?
Yeah. And I will just mention that I'm on a number of not-for-profit boards. The thing that, and before that, I did a lot of for-profit stuff, including some boards. The thing that I had really hoped is that this firm would educate us as the board a little bit on the kinds of things that can happen and the kinds of audits that there are. And, you know, I was, because I think it's just so educational. That did not happen. But this letter finally did start to address some of the things that I was really hoping we would be educated on. Like, hey, if you've got real fraud and there's people falsifying things, we're not going to catch that. We are going to say.
In fairness to Amy, CJ, she did spend a lot of time talking to Jen and I know you were really caught up with one of your animals, and so weren't able to join us, but she did go over that in, a long time took us, I finally, I don't know that I can repeat it back, but I understood it. And I think she would be willing, once we get this done, once she's finished the audit, I think she would be willing to have that discussion with the board after it's done and she's done her work, to come talk
Yeah,
to
that
us.
would be.
She's very accommodating.
What is the
That
time?
sounds
Do we have an estimated timeline that this would?
Yeah, she
be
was
sitting
starting
here?
in January and, and however long it takes, and it's $7,500. That's a firm number, isn't it?
Mhm.
I was thinking she was gonna give us a range.
Oh.
Cause she doesn't know what she's really doing with here, but it was just 7,500, which is way under what we budgeted, so it works for me.
So would she be willing to come and just sort of talk us through the findings?
I think she should meet the board,
Yeah.
but I didn't wanna pound on her before we, because we had a very good meeting with her, Jim and I, so I think afterwards she would come, and if we want to use her again, it would be a good way to get to know her as our consultant.
So in preparation
Right.
for her visit, we can read this
Yeah.
and mark it and put question marks on it.
Yeah, and-
You can
and-
bring it when she's here.
Well,
Yeah.
there's something on there that needs to be changed,
we have to know.
and I don't want to sign it if there's something that,
I was not worrying about changes as much as understanding
oh, okay, oh, yes, right, that'd be
and
perfect.
getting questions
Mhm.
answered.
Yep, that'd be
So
perfect.
we have to November 1st. I wrote this down. It's
November
captured
1st.
here to
Email
respond.
me or silence is golden.
Right.
I will
Okay.
take that
It just-
as a. What is that
So the
phrase?
board under, for example, many of you may have noticed that EC Fiber had an issue with embezzlement, and EC Fiber was audited every year. And so that was part of why I was, kind of, and ORCA's not in a situation where that kind of thing
Right.
is a concern, but it was part of why I was kind of really pushing to just say to everybody, this is a tool like all other tools, but an audit doesn't give you a clean financial bill of health. It says this type of audit says you're following generally accepted accounting practices. And there's my understanding is that there's kind of a real expectation that's been set and we expect to have delivered on. that they'll apply their expertise to saying to ORCA, here are some ways that you could modify your practices
Right.
to be more consistent with GAAP, et cetera. So that as we start to move forward into a world where our funding sources are different, we're prepared for that. This is not this isn't a deep dive. This isn't going to find issues. It's basically going to say, hey,
Right.
I
the
think
business
we have to
processes.
make a policy about how often we want this done. Do people do it every 3 years, every 5 years, because it's pretty basic in and out money here. It's not too complicated like
Yeah.
some of. So we should
I
decide.
think every
at some
3 to
meeting, 3 to 5. Well, we have to decide. It.
I expect 3 to 5.
Because
I'm expecting
it's
3
a
to 5 for our type of.
Yeah, pretty basic.
Expecting
All
3 to
right,
5.
so November 1st, if you have any
Yeah.
questions or anything you think should be addressed or changed in the letter,
Okay,
it's a highly recognized firm.
This is probably just what she sends out to everyone.
Oh, well, yeah, there's
Yeah.
some. And we had a long discussion about whether she should do the 990s. Is that what you call them, 990s, which we get done by another
Yeah.
company?
And I think
And
we're gonna,
she pretty much said, if you're gonna have them do it, I'm not doing it because it's their baby, their documents.
No,
She-
really, what she said is, do you want us to do the 990s? And
Yes. she'll
I
do
think
it.
we wrote back and I was like,
Right. We were hoping she would just look
And-
at it. I think she felt uncomfortable about doing that. So they'll do it or our other.
That absolute sense. I mean, I do the 990s for a nonprofit that got its C3 under me. 990s are simple. And in fact, they're a postcard if your revenues are low enough. Ours would be a little bit bigger than a postcard because we have revenues of over 50,000, but they're not complicated. I mean, I don't know why she would say that. She's unwilling to look them over. There are things on there that should be read and understood. But
Well, I don't think she'd like to, if we're gonna hire somebody, she didn't like to oversee the people we're hiring. That was some conflict of interest or who knows why. But anyway, it made sense to me when we talked to her, so. Anyway, the other business I wanted to talk about tonight was Bill Doyle's award. I spoke to his daughter-in-law, Lee's wife. I reached out to the twins, but they were, I didn't follow up with them because they didn't follow up with me. Apparently they're not, I don't think they realize who's on this phone. This isn't being taped, is it?
Yeah.
it is.
Okay, never mind.
It absolutely is.
I don't think there is, attuned to Bill's fame here, I think. It's very strange. But anyway, I talked to Mike Doyle while he was campaigning on the street. Every time somebody would call him, hello, I'm Mike Doyle. He said Bill was always interested in leadership in young people. And that he would think that if we gave an award that accepted people making nominations for young people who perhaps used social media, used whatever the current.
Or made a movie.
And movies and stuff to get their message across, to change the world. That, we could, pick somebody to be the, up and coming media leader or something along that line. And, but he also said, that it should have a substantial money with it, an award of funds. And so that's how we left it. I think that's all I put in my email, but he thought it was wonderful, a nice plaque. And asked for, solicit, names and have the board select who and have a big deal event.
Good.
So we just have to decide how we want to do that. I think there's so many.
well,
young
that's,
people-
yeah.
Go ahead.
I
No,
think,
go ahead.
why don't we ask Mike to suggest an amount?
We did
And
$2,000.
figure out a way to,
Michael said
Mhm.
$2,000.
Oh, okay, so he had an amount, super.
Yep, he did. He said 2,000, which I don't know if that's a
Okay.
lot, not a lot.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I think that's,
And, we could actually ask for some nominations.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and put it in the paper, put it in the, that we're soliciting names for,
Usually they
the
have-
Bill Doyle Leadership Award.
Kind of like usually jump up at like at the annual meeting,
Yeah.
announce it.
Yeah,
or
right,
something.
so have a big party.
Yeah.
So my suggestion and might be that if we were to give, this award in the amount of $2,000, might it not be better to do it instead of a cash award, but give it more as for example, like a card to a company that provides gear, so people would buy gear, that way we promote the production of more content. Just a thought, right?
Like that,
Not sure, but
yeah. Yeah, because you would want it to go to what Bill would have liked it to be spent on.
Yeah, I'm curious about the solicitation of names, like,
Well-
what are people gonna send someone's name in, or?
We would need a description of what the award is for, then they should write why their person meets the criteria of like I already have my name picked out and who I want to submit.
Well, the reason I ask is that, I wonder if there's a way that it could be more, engaging, like, we open the submissions and the submissions are done in the form of media, a project being given to us. And so then it's sort of like, we're,
From the
the person
people
who,
with the award.
yeah, who would receive the award, and then, maybe we could broadcast them.
Yeah.
It's not exactly a contest, but I mean,
yeah.
I don't know.
Well, because the one thing I left out of that description is to impact the community. So the people, leaders within their community, using whatever the media is, using it, whether doing blogs or who knows what, to get the community involved.
Okay, I guess it could be a varied use, yeah.
Skin for Katie.
Well, I think there's a lot we need to discuss still,
Yeah.
because we have to create a rubric with the
Yeah.
committee who's gonna decide
Right.
who gets what, what are the qualifications that people are gonna decide
I
this,
think
like
it's a
all
long
that.
discussion.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's a separate
The next
discussion.
meeting, I think.
Yeah,
Or does it go to a circle? Does this fall into
does it?
tidally into one of the circles?
What are our circles?
I was gonna say maybe it's because it might be like outreach policy and like a new, like temporary circle of like, because it seems like it may be a little bit of both, because like the policy might help with the rubric and the outreach is how do we get people to know about it so that it's hitting all kinds of different channels and not just
Right.
the people in the know.
Right,
I like it.
And
Right.
so, and then it's like, and it could be with facilities, like what do you want it, if you want it to be like a portfolio type, like,
Right.
do we also offer like equipment available? So if someone wants to put together something that,
Because I would suggest getting two plaques. One plaque goes to the person and the other plaque stays here with their name, like on a link. And then, and you keep adding every year the names of the people who won the award, with their, on a link. That's cool.
is there
I
a
mean, the thing
timeline
that
that we're thinking? Like, do we want it for this year,
Well, let's see
next
what-
year?
We have to, next year.
Okay.
We'll start next year.
D-
I
d-
would think.
Partly what it's maybe a selfish desire, but I would love to
Hi.
also stimulate
up.
people using
Phew.
resources that ORCA has in
Are
order
you feeling
to,
better?
make more media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, right,
If
and that's
we were
it.
getting people in here
That's-
using
yeah.
our gear to
Absolutely.
go out and make projects that they would then submit for the thing, it's like, okay, great, now we've got like a site, the circle of life.
Okay, 1 second.
Yeah.
My son, so cool.
So $2,000, instead of it being an award, is $2,000 support, production support stipend or something like that.
I think that, are there, I know there's gotta be companies around here. Are there not? Are there any?
Depends on what you wanna get, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to think, what would it be, a B&H gift card?
Yeah,
That's what I was
thinking.
thinking immediately, right? That's what I
Yeah.
went to. I mean, the thing is, that what I like about that is that forces the person,
Right.
right, to commit more to the
And you can buy
medium
something good
and to
for
produce more
2,000.
work. Like, it's also furthering, right, our mission of, empowering, right, just, or giving access to others to be empowered to create. Right?
Mhm.
I don't know, just putting it out there.
Right, so
So-
we lost Palin.
On how to do.
All right,
So should we?
put that on the agenda for next
Should
time.
we, so
Yeah.
this, I put this under, should the outreach circle tackle the ward? Question? I just put it here.
Or I was gonna say, I guess, we can start it off in outreach and we may need to like ask others to
Right.
come in
Yeah.
and maybe expand it for this particular like award.
So this will like right up like.
Yeah,
an
so narrow it down to
idea,
tackle the word.
like a-
Right, okay,
Okay,
But
It
it'll
also-
start off in outreach.
It also might be that we spend enough time putting together something that's really respectful of who Bill Doyle was. And we actually, announce it somewhere near the anniversary of the senator's death.
Yeah, something
right,
meaningful.
right, and I think that will happen, that part will happen, but to hammer out the details of
Yeah, that's what I'm
what the
saying.
word is gonna do, it's a lot of work,
It's gotta be right,
right, so,
yeah,
all right, so I'm just gonna put this for next time, we're gonna move this over.
yeah, let's think about it. Rob. We have some
Holden
good ideas.
stays in.
Is anything under new business?
Girl. Okay, there you go.
Okay.
Bunny to a cat.
All right.
I feel like it's a horse.
Or a horse.
So does
Cat?
anybody have any new business they want to share?
I don't know if this goes under new business, but it's one of the things that I want to put on our findings from the tour that I thought was really easily actionable
Right.
from the tour at Media Factory was becoming a location for art walk.
Uh-huh.
They participate in the art, whatever the thing was there, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, that would be such an easy way to get people to stop by the studio once a month.
Assuming we have art.
Well, we
Yeah,
have
to get
artworks.
the artwork, and
Not
the people
Oh,
sign up.
the people like,
Yeah,
like somebody's
Well,
dad.
yeah, my dad.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
call you daddy myself.
I already talked to him.
What do you say?
He said we could do it some part.
Who's in charge of Art Walk? Is that a Montpelier Alive?
That's 5 on at Cal.
At Cal, okay.
Is there?
So Orca Media becoming a location for art walk, like putting it out there?
That's cool. What-
Yeah, all we have to do is check with Python, I think, that's.
Who got married?
But see, we're close enough to
Do we
the
know?
center of town that it can be an easy art walk.
So have like exhibitions, have something up here.
Yeah.
So I'm talking to being out here.
You know,
Yeah.
in the offices over there.
Well, they do the.
It's an
what,
easy
3
first step to
o'clock
try and
on-
get people
That'd
here.
be cool. What
On
fun.
Tuesdays, the kids upstairs.
Yeah,
You know
So
how
I'll
he
reach
got
out.
married?
okay.
That's cool. I'm so excited for him. About time those two got together.
I
I've been
just
going
met
to-
someone down in Brattleboro who's a friend of theirs from down there.
Oh,
Had to go down and do a Q&A for a touring films down in Putney.
oh.
Right.
Right. Trip.
So,
Anything?
Right. So
Yeah.
anything else to just, what is her husband's name? He does, her name earlier, Carlos. He's an expert on cemeteries and he wrote a book about the signs and symbols on cemeteries in Vermont.